the UConn Huskies solidified their spot as the #1 team in America. Why? They absolutely destroyed a Creighton team that a lot of people thought would be a Final Four contender. The big man, Kling came back, Donovan Clingan, and came off the bench. He scored 6 points in 16 minutes, but, man, he looked pretty healthy. He was diving on the floor, grabbing boards, trying to push it a little bit. Doug, is UConn, now that you've seen him with Kling back healthy, are they the #1 team and the favorite for you going into March?
Wow. Yeah. I think they're the favorite. Look, we do this thing with our brain where we're like, well, will this UConn team beat last year's UConn team? And you know what? It doesn't matter because they don't actually have to beat last year's team or any opponent from previous years. They only have to beat the teams in front of them. But kind of go through all these teams and try to figure out who could win it all, right? And they all have some sort of fatal flaw. I think the flaw to UConn would be, the one guy who can really break down a defense, the one guy who can be a difference maker athletically outside of all of their stuff and their shooting and their spacing and their incredible ball movement is just a freshman. That's like their flaw, right? And I don't think they don't have a Jordan Hawkins from last year. They have probably more overall shooting and scoring, and they're maybe a better team, although they're really good last year. And I still have the fears of playing small against them. I think could affect them, although they've shown the versatility without Donovan Clingan to win. But they lost to Kansas, who I think is a national championship contender, by like a bucket at Fog Allen. I feel like on a neutral court, they'd be favored right now. I think they present a lot of problems for Purdue, who's another kind of favorite. I like Carolina, but I don't think that – I think they're better than Carolina. I think Carolina is impressive defensively and a nice team, but I don't think they're better than UConn. So, yeah, I'm kind of going through it in my brain. Like I watch Arizona, and Arizona's playing two bigs, and they're okay. They're good, but there's not a lot of jaw dropping. So, and then there's Kentucky, who I love the way they play, but with all of that youth taking so many shots, and they just kind of patch it together inside. Yeah, those are the other best teams, other most likely teams. Then, yeah, I'd say UConn is the favorite because they're really well coached. They play really hard, very physical. They can play big. They can play small. They can beat you a bunch of different ways. And, last night in a game where they had to score in the 60s to win, they looked really comfortable. And they won that game because of their defense, not because of their offense. And that's a special thing to be able to do.
Yeah, I trust them. I guess I just trust them more than Purdue, and not necessarily because of the loss in the first round last year, but that's got a little bit to do with it. I mean, like UConn won the whole thing last year, and I know they're both different teams, and Purdue got bounced in probably the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history. That's got to account for a little bit. But again, I think what you said is true, and you went through it kind of in your head there, but you got to it at the very end, which is they can outscore you, and they can also beat you in a grinder. And there's not too many teams that you can say that about, right? And they play hard all the time. That's one thing that a Danny Hurley team, they're not going to have too many lackadaisical games where they don't give A-plus toughness and effort. And I think you know what you're going to get out of Caravan and Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton for the most part, right? Like Clingan still, we got to see him stay healthy, but he doesn't have to give you that much offensively. I think we thought he'd be a force on both ends of the court. He doesn't really need to be a force on the offensive end, but he's got to be a force, and he is when he's in the game defensively.